ready to start this part of the lesson, the uniqueness of Buddhism. So all quite good in Buddhism now already, right? After all the lessons we've gone through all the last few weeks, so no more beginners. Okay, the reason is because this topic, called the uniqueness of Buddhism, is actually a diploma level topic. That means after 5 years in the Mangala Vihara YMBA course, then you do this topic called the uniqueness of Buddhism. Because you must know all the various aspects of Buddhism, all the various aspects of the Dharma, before you can know what is the uniqueness of Buddhism. If you don't know the Dharma well, you don't know Buddhism well, then how can you even know what is so unique about Buddhism? So we're going to talk about this topic tonight. It's going to be really, really very intensive. You all will be overwhelmed at the end of the talk, and then I will be breathless at the end of the talk. Okay, so this is the uniqueness of Buddhism. What I've done is I've broken it up into 3 different modes about why Buddhism is unique. The first mode is the philosophy or the approach. Second mode is the teachings or the doctrine. And lastly is about the practice. So these are the 3 modes why Buddhism is unique. So that's why I said, if you don't know Buddhism well enough, you will never be able to appreciate this topic fully. That's why only after 5 years then you can deal with this topic. So let's go into philosophy first. This is actually a recap of the entire course plus a few other things. Okay? So the first thing is the philosophy, the approach of Buddhism. There's 4 aspects to this. The first aspect of why Buddhism is so unique as regards to its philosophy and approach is number 1, free inquiry. Number 2, it's realistic and practical. Number 3, it emphasizes morality and practice over faith and worship. And it emphasizes tolerance and respect. So I'm going to go through this one by one. First lesson, this is what we covered, right? For those of you who are here. What is the one thing that sets Buddhism apart from all the other belief systems, all the other religions? The first and most important thing is the freedom of inquiry. So in Buddhism, blind faith is not only not required, blind faith is discouraged. Instead, questioning and investigating is encouraged so that we can make our own informed decisions about the path we want to take for ourselves. In other words, before we decide which direction we want to go, before we decide which path we want to go, we should question and investigate and find out more first. So this is what Buddhism exactly is saying, that not to have blind faith, to follow blindly, but to question, investigate and find out before you embark on the path you want to take. Blind faith is discouraged, questioning and investigating is encouraged. This is the one thing to me that sets Buddhism apart from all the other religions. Most other religions will require blind faith. They will just tell you, just believe and that's it. So in the first lesson, we dealt with the Kamma Sutta. In the Kamma Sutta, the Buddha said it is right to doubt and to ask questions. It is not wrong, it is right, okay, to doubt and ask questions. He did not say, do not believe the others, believe me. Instead, the Buddha taught us the proper way to discover the truth. And in the Kamma Sutta, these are the factors which he advised us to not rely on without further verification. We covered this in the first session, so I'm just going to run through them very quickly. So we should not rely on the following without further verification: oral history or divine revelations, tradition, reports or rumors, scriptures or holy books. Even the Buddhist texts also we must discern and see clearly for ourselves. Logical reasoning, philosophical reasoning, outward appearances, this is important. Our own opinions, authorities or experts, this is also important. And our own teacher, even our own teacher also, we should not have blind faith in them, but to observe, see how they teach, see how they behave before we can have some reliance on their teachings, on what they teach us. So the Buddha also taught us the criteria for acceptance or rejection in the Kamma Sutta. He says to observe, analyze and test it out for ourselves, and then ask ourselves, does the teaching agree with reason? Furthermore, will it lead to harm or good for yourself and others? Will it lead to suffering or happiness for yourself and others? And finally, will a wise person praise or disapprove of it? So during the lesson, somebody asked a very good question. How do you know whether a person is wise or not? So this is through observation. Observe not through a short time, but through at least a reasonable amount of time to see whether that person is really wise or he is really not wise. Whether he practices what he preaches or he doesn't practice what he preaches. Finally, if yes, then accept it and live up to it. If yes, then of course you should accept it. If not, then what's the point of finding out? And then after that, if we accept it, then we should live up to it. We should practice what we have decided, what the path is for ourselves. So the next aspect is morality and practice over faith and worship. Most other teachings and religions place faith and worship above all else. However, Buddhism recognizes that while faith and worship can be helpful in some circumstances, what is far more important is our morality and our practice. In the earlier lesson, we defined faith. There are two aspects of faith. One is blind faith, one is wisdom faith. So blind faith is dogmatic and unquestioning. Wisdom faith is receptive and inquiring. So these are two different types of faith, two contrasting types of faith. Morality also, there are two aspects of morality. One is externalized morality. Responsibility is outside ourselves. That means we just behave according to what others tell us to do. Whether it's right or wrong, we just follow. The other aspect is our morality is internalized. That means we take responsibility for our own actions. So you can see the difference. One is we do not take responsibility for our own actions. We just leave it to what others tell us to do. The other more important one is we take responsibility for our own actions. This is what Buddhism teaches us. So Buddhism encourages a combination of internalized morality and wisdom faith. We take responsibility for our own actions, having wisdom faith. Faith based on knowledge and understanding, not blind faith. So the Buddha also went on in some of his teachings. He said when some people approached him, they were admiring the Buddha so much. He told them, these people who came to admire his physical body, he asked them, what is there to see in this vile body? He says, he who sees the Dharma sees me. In other words, he who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha, and he who sees me sees the Dharma. So here the Buddha clearly says there's nothing to worship about his physical body. What is far more important is the Dharma, the practice of his teachings. So he says, truly seeing the Dharma, one sees me, and seeing me, one sees the Dharma. So this is clearly placing morality and practice over faith and worship. Even the Buddha discouraged faith and worship in his physical body, but he emphasized morality and practice. So in other teachings, he also went on to say, not by birth is one an outcast, not by birth is one a Brahmin. In other words, an outcast to the Buddha is someone who does a lot of harmful deeds to others and for themselves. A Brahman is one who does many good things, avoids evil. So he says, it is not by birth that determines whether a person is an outcast, and birth does not determine whether a person is a holy man or a Brahman. He says, it's the deeds which counts. By deed, one becomes an outcast. By deed, one becomes a Brahman. Not by birth, but by what you do. Okay? So this is very important. This encapsulates the Buddhist philosophy of morality and practice over faith and worship, in this case, over your birth, over your station, over your status. The next aspect is that Buddhism is realistic and practical. So in many instances, the Buddha is likened to be like a doctor. He discovers the illness, he diagnoses the illness, he sees that there is a cure, and he prescribes the correct medicine for recovery or for health and well-being. So this is precisely what a doctor does when we go to see him or her. The doctor discovers the illness first, and then he diagnoses the illness. What exactly is the illness? And then further on from that, a good doctor doesn't just stop at that point. He doesn't stop at discovering the illness, he doesn't stop at diagnosing the illness, but he goes on to see that there is a cure, and he goes on to prescribe the correct medicine for a recovery. So how do we relate this to the Buddha's teachings? Okay, the first one. Discovering the illness is like the first aspect of the Four Noble Truths. In other words, all beings are subject to dukkha. All beings are subject to suffering, or more properly termed unsatisfactoriness. That means all of us are subject to dukkha. This is the illness. The next step, diagnosing the illness, it says dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, arises from desire and craving. And then further to that, the cure, seeing that there is a cure, the Third Noble Truth says that Dukkha, suffering, can be eliminated. And fourthly, prescribing the correct medicine for our health and well-being is none other than the Noble Eightfold Path, is the way for our enduring health and happiness. So you see how practical are the Buddha's teachings, even related to how a doctor actually diagnoses and treats a patient in a clinic. So realistic and practical, Buddhism is also very compatible with modern science. Among all the major religions of the world, Buddhism does not have any major or significant conflicts with the discoveries of modern science. It does not have any creation myths, nor does it attempt to attribute any natural phenomenon to supernatural causes. Because according to modern science, as we went through in the third lesson, the universe was created through a big bang, and then after that it expands and contracts, and then there's a big crunch, and then this goes on and on. So there are no creation myths that, this being or that being created the world or the universe. So it does not attribute natural phenomenon to supernatural causes. I think recently there was a report, I think on the internet, I'm not sure whether it's in the papers or not. There was this cleric in Iran. Recently there are a lot of earthquakes, right? So this cleric gave a teaching, he was reported. He says the reason why there's so many earthquakes is because the women nowadays are very immoral. So he blamed you all. So when Buddhism, that's not the case, because earthquakes are just simply due to natural phenomena. You don't attribute this earthquake, this natural disaster, to things like immorality, right? It really doesn't make sense at all. So this is the aspect that Buddhism is compatible with modern sciences. It is realistic and practical. So the fourth aspect, tolerance and respect. The Buddha never used any threats or tried to force anyone to accept his teachings. He believed in freedom of thought. He recognized that not everyone will accept his teachings. This is quite true. I mean, whatever teaching you do, sure, not everybody will accept. Some will accept, some may not accept. So you cannot force everybody to accept, because everybody thinks differently, everybody is different. So the Buddha recognized that not everyone will accept his teachings, and that people progress differently and will choose different paths for themselves. So what the Buddha did is that he preferred to explain his teachings in a logical and reasonable manner, and he wanted people to understand and realize the teachings for themselves without fear of any punishments. I'm sure you know many religions, they threaten the non-believers with punishments, with eternal hell, so on and so forth. So Buddhism does not have any of these threats or punishments. The Buddha wanted people to understand and realize the teachings for themselves without threats or punishments. Buddhism is not about threats or rewards, but it is about knowledge and understanding. There was a story during the Buddha's time. This ascetic called Upali was one of the chief followers of the Jain master Mahavira. Because of his intelligence, this person, Upali, often appeared in public debates on behalf of the Jains. Because in India, as we covered in the second lesson, the social culture of India, that the people at that time, they had many public debates between the teachers of different philosophies and religions. So this person called Upali, he was very good in his debates. That's why he debated many times on behalf of the Jains. So Upali once had a debate with the Buddha, and Upali was so impressed with the Buddha's teachings that he asked to be the Buddha's follower. So but the Buddha said, you are at the height of your emotions, because suddenly he met a great master, the Buddha, and then he became very emotional. So he wanted to go and become a follower of the Buddha, when actually he was a follower of the Jains. So the Buddha said, go home and reconsider carefully. The Buddha did not immediately say, oh great, you become my follower, I've converted you from the other religion. The Buddha said, go home and reconsider it carefully before you ask me again. Because of this, Upali became even more impressed. He said, if the Buddha was any other guru or any other teacher, he would have made a big deal out of it, that he converted this Upali from the other teacher. Other teachers would have a parade, they would throw a celebration saying that Mahavira, the Jain's teacher, Mahavira's chief lay disciple, has been converted by the Buddha. But the Buddha did not do such thing. So that's why Upali was even more impressed, and he wanted even more to become a follower of the Buddha. So the Buddha gave Upali a condition that he will accept him. So he said, Upali, I will accept you if you will continue to give alms to the Jain monks. So isn't that so magnanimous, so compassionate? The Buddha said, yes, I will accept you, but still continue your practice to support the monks of the other religion. So when you become my follower, you will continue to give alms to the Jain monk. So in what other religion can you see such magnanimity, see such compassion, see such understanding? So Upali agreed and he became one of the Buddha's disciples. So this is just an example of tolerance and respect for other religions in Buddhism. So we go on to the next aspect of the uniqueness of Buddhism. The next aspect is the teachings, the doctrines. So the first one is the ultimate and universal truth, rationality and free will in Buddhism, self-salvation and self-realization, and compassion and equality. So again we go through one by one. The ultimate and universal truth. No other teacher in the world has ever perceived and taught the three characteristics of existence, which are the universal and ultimate truths of existence. There's really no other teacher in the world that has perceived anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, anatta, insubstantiality. The Buddha is the only teacher that has seen these truths. Just to recap, anicca, impermanence. All things are impermanent. Everything is in the process of changing into something else. For example, all of us are in the process of aging, all of us are in the process of change. Even the stars and galaxies above us are in the process of change. So this is anicca, impermanence, the first characteristic of existence. Next, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness or suffering. Because all things are impermanent, everything is changing, there's nothing that you can cling to. Existence is subject to dukkha. Existence is unsatisfactory in nature. This is because there will always be the craving for the pleasant and aversion for the unpleasant. You always want good things, you don't want bad things. And this results from the ever-changing nature of existence. The next, the most profound of the three characteristics of existence, anatta, insubstantiality or non-self. This is a universal truth that there is no permanent or unchanging self. So the self which we are conditioned to believe exists is comprised of nothing more than different mental and physical constituents which are in a state of constant change because of cause and effect. So further from this, the Buddha also is the only teacher to realize that we, all of us, every single one of us here, we are comprised of nothing more than the five aggregates. So the five aggregates, as we went through previously, is rupa, our body, vijnana, our consciousness, vedana, our feelings, sanya, our perceptions, and sankhara, our mental states. So all of us are comprised of nothing more than these five aggregates, and the Buddha is the only one to realize this. However, if we do not practice the teachings of the Buddha, we will never be able to have a chance to see all these truths of existence. We will always be clouded in ignorance and delusion. It's only by practicing the teachings of Buddhism that we will gradually be able to see the ultimate and universal truths of our existence, and only through this that we are able to attain lasting and true peace and happiness. So the next aspect is karma and free will. Karma literally means intentional action, and this refers to the Buddhist belief in the principle of cause and effect. That is, every intentional act will give rise to a corresponding result in either the present life or in a future life when conditions are right. Okay, other teachings, especially the Indian teachings, they also have the concept of karma. What is distinct in Buddhism is that karma actions must be intentional. Because the Jains, for example, to them every action brings about karma. Every action has karma, whether or not you intend that action. So even if you do something accidentally, let's say you step on an insect accidentally without knowing it is there, you kill it. To the Jains, that brings about negative karma. But in Buddhism, that does not bring about negative karma because there is no intention to harm that insect or to kill that insect. That's the reason why I say that intentional is the key word here for the Buddhist concept of karma. So to clarify, the results of karma are not rewards or punishments, but they are simply the results or outcome of intentional actions. That means nobody punishes you, nobody is keeping record of whether you're a good boy or a good girl or a bad boy or a bad girl. It's just the natural results of intentional actions. So positive actions will eventually result in positive consequences, and negative actions will eventually result in negative consequences. So again, further to the subject of karma, many people, especially from other religions, especially the theistic religions, the God-based religions, many people always wonder about the fairness of life, why everyone is not born equal, right? So questions are always asked about why is one person so healthy, another one so sickly, one handicapped, whatever the case may be. Why is one person born wealthy, another person born into poverty? How come one person can enjoy a long and happy life and another dying early by violence or accident? So Buddhists, we do not believe that all these inequalities are because of random events, because of luck, because of fate, or because of the will of God. Buddhism believes that karma and rebirth are able to explain all these differences in people's lives. To come back to the subject of intention. So in Buddhism, there is free will. Because there are some teachings also that teach that everything is fated. No matter what you do, you cannot change your destiny. But Buddhism says otherwise. There is free will. So the free will comes from your mind, all of our minds. So again, the Dhammapada verse 1 and 2, it states, mind is the forerunner of all evil states. Mind is chief and all evil states are mind-made. That means if you do evil things, it is up to you. All these evil actions are due to your own mind. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, suffering will follow as the wheel follows the hoof of the ox. You cannot escape the negative consequences of your negative actions, which are due to your mind. So the other side of the coin is the good states. Mind is the forerunner of all good states. Mind is chief and good states are all mind-made. So if one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows as one's shadow that never leaves. That means if you do good things, happiness will inevitably follow. It's just a matter of time. So that's about karma and free will. The next aspect is self-realization and self-salvation. So what do we mean by this? Firstly, the Buddha was self-enlightened. Nobody enlightened the Buddha. He was not enlightened by any god or any external factors. So the Buddha declared that he was self-enlightened without any external help. This is what he said after he attained enlightenment. He said, all abandoning released in the ending of craving. That means he has overcome all aspects of desire and craving. So having fully known on my own the release of the ending of craving, he has gained enlightenment. Having fully known on my own, to whom shall I point as my teacher? So the Buddha says he has no teacher. He is self-enlightened. And when he became enlightened, there is no other person in the world such as him that is enlightened, a perfectly self-enlightened Buddha. He has realized the truth by himself without the need for any external factors. So this also relates to all of us. By oneself is evil done, and by oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil not done, and by oneself is one purified. So this Dhammapada verse states that purity and impurity depend entirely on ourselves. No one can purify another. I mean, you cannot purify another. You cannot also not make another person responsible for your bad actions, right? Let's say you do bad things. Can you transfer those bad karma to another person? You can't. Right? So if you do good things, can you also transfer to another person? You can't. So this simply means that we depend on ourselves. Purity and impurity depend on ourselves. No one can purify another. Further verses from the suttas: be islands unto yourselves, refuges unto yourselves, seek no external refuge. With the Dharma as your island, the Dharma as your refuge, seeking no other refuge. That means we take the Dharma as our own refuge and then we become islands unto ourselves. We are our own refuge with the Dharma. So the Buddha's final words all composite things pass away. In other words, all conditioned things pass away. Strive for your own salvation with diligence. He didn't say rely on this, rely on that, on other external factors. He did not say rely on any external factors at all. What he's saying is precisely the opposite. What he is saying is we should strive for our own salvation. And not only strive for our own salvation, but we should do it with diligence, with effort. So the next aspect of the teachings is compassion and equality. Unconditional compassion. This is something which is, again, very, very unique to Buddhism. In Buddhism, metta, I'm sure you all know metta. Metta is the desire for all beings without exception to be well and happy. The key words here are without exception, because for many other teachings, this does not hold true. How many other religions you know that they want all beings without exception to be well and happy? How many other religions say that all beings can go to heaven? Of course not, right? It's only reserved for their own particular teachings or for their own particular religion. But for Buddhism, it's a bit different. It's unconditional, no strings attached. The Buddha said that this is similar to the love that a mother has for her only child. Because this is the best example of unconditional love, the best example of unconditional compassion. The love the mother has for her only child. From the Metta Sutta, the Buddha teaches us, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all beings, all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world. So this is something also we should keep in mind, to practice our metta for all beings without exception, to be well and happy, free from physical and mental suffering, free from greed, hatred and delusion. Another teaching the Buddha gave, very meaningful, one of the most meaningful teachings which not many people know about. This teaching says, I teach you now this doctrine. The Buddha is saying, I teach you now this doctrine. Put yourself in the position of others. Others means not only human beings, but all other living beings. Put yourself in the position of others. Imagine and experience both their comforts and discomforts, their joys and their sorrows. Feel for yourself their likes and dislikes. Live truly in the midst of others all the time. It is only through this practice that you can really develop true compassion, true metta, because you put yourself in the shoes of the other living being, the other person, the other animal. That is why if you practice this, quite easy to become vegetarian. Because if you put yourself in the position of those poor animals raised as food, suffer and to die, to be killed, then it is less likely that you have a lot of craving and desire to eat them. So this is the Buddha just telling us to put ourselves in the position of all others. So then, in this way, we can truly develop unconditional compassion for all sentient beings, for all living beings. In Buddhism, there's also social equality. In Buddhism, all the different social groups within society have reciprocal responsibilities to each other. Because as you know, during the Buddha's time, there was a caste system. So the caste system was very segregated, a lot of unfairness, very harsh towards the lower caste. So unlike the caste system, in Buddhism, no group should have dominance over any other group. So for example, all the different segments in society, this is taken from the Sigalovada Sutta, which we went through a few lessons ago. Children and parents, students and teachers, husbands and wives, friends and associates, employees and employers, laypersons and spiritual teachers, all these have responsibilities towards each other. There's also sexual equality in Buddhism, because unlike many other religions, the Buddha preached equality between the sexes. Some of the theistic religions also, they put the female sex very much lower than the male, subservient to the males. So in Buddhism, the Buddha preached equality. For example, he allowed women to join the Sangha because women are also able to attain enlightenment, not only the men. His foster mother, Maha Pajapati, was the first in the order of nuns, and his wife Yasodhara also became a bhikkhuni, and both eventually became enlightened. They became arahants. So this shows the equality between the sexes. Okay, so we've seen the philosophy, we've seen the teachings, and finally we come to the practice. What is unique about Buddhism regards its practice? So the first is differentiated and gradual. Next, it's systematic and consistent. Third is verifiable. Fourth, If you practice, you can attain immediate results, not needing to wait until death, because many religions, you die, then you can have all the rewards. In Buddhism, no, you can attain results in this very life. Okay, differentiated and gradual. So what do I mean by this? The Buddha adapted the manner and style of his teachings. So he used different ways of teaching to different people. He used simpler concepts for the ordinary people and more complex ideas for maybe the more educated and intellectual audiences. He recognized that everybody is different. There are people who are not so intelligent, some who are very intelligent, but he will give the correct teachings to these people, whether they are ordinary or whether they are intellectual. So he realized that everyone, we all travel at different speeds. We are all at different stages of progress, and we are all at different parts of our lives. So there's no one-size-fits-all philosophy in Buddhism. In most other religions, everybody is just the same. You just follow that religion and that's it. But in Buddhism, at least, there's a way of practice for people of different stages, of different capabilities. So in this sutta, the Buddha also said, it is possible, Brahmin, I guess he was talking to a Brahmin at that time, it is possible, Brahmin, to describe gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress in this Dharma and discipline. So what he's just saying is that everybody travels at different speeds. Everybody is of different capacities and different capabilities. So this is a gradual training, a gradual practice, and gradual progress. A very good example is this story soon after the Buddha attained enlightenment. He met this millionaire son called Yasa at a park. He gave a teaching to Yasa and his friends. Yasa and his friends actually were very rich. They had a lot of women, they were fooling around. Buddha met them in the park, so he gave them a teaching. The Buddha spoke first on generosity. He spoke first on morality, and then he spoke on the heavenly rebirth. That means if you practice generosity, you practice morality, you can attain a heavenly rebirth. For people who are just starting out in practice, may find this easier to accept. Because if you tell people about Four Noble Truth, Eightfold Path, about Nibbana, letting go, renunciation, people who are starting out may find all these concepts, all these practices a bit difficult to accept and understand. Likewise, in this situation, he first encountered Yasa and his friends. They are millionaires, young people. If you tell them too profound things, too difficult things, they may just take all these teachings with a pinch of salt and then they just go off from there. So what the Buddha did was he gave a gradual teaching. He spoke first on generosity, morality, and then you can attain a heavenly rebirth. It's only after they are able to accept this, then he began to speak of the dangers of sensual pleasures, of craving, of attachment, of greed. And then he spoke of the benefits of renunciation. Again, renunciation does not necessarily mean that you renounce everything to become a monk, but you renounce gradually all your greed, your craving, your aversion, your hatred, your ill will. After the simpler teachings, then the bit more advanced teaching, right? The dangers of sensual pleasures and the benefits of renunciation. And then finally, when they were ready, then only did the Buddha teach them the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. So you can see how this is a gradual progress, even in this example. So just to summarize this part about the differentiated and gradual progress, the Buddha taught first to Yasa and his friends dana, generosity, helping others, sila, morality, keeping the precepts. And once you have these two things, you will have the reward of a heavenly rebirth, saga. That means the Buddha taught first dana, sila, saga, not dana, sila, bhavana. So dana, sila, bhavana is the next higher stage. Again, dana, generosity, helping others, sila, morality, keeping the precepts, and finally then you come to meditation, bhavana, meditation, mental cultivation. Because it is only through this bhavana, mental cultivation, that we can see and realize the Four Noble Truths, and this will enable us to attain our own salvation. So it's not the first set of teachings, dana, sila, saga, but dana, sila, bhavana. For people who may not be able to accept all this meditation and all these slightly more advanced practices, then you teach them dana, sila, saga first, and then after that, then you teach them dana, sila, bhavana. So it's differentiated for different people and it's gradual for people of different capacities. So the Buddha also went on to say, this is encouragement for all of us. He says, do not disregard merit, saying it will not come to me. Because some people are very pessimistic. They do not think that all these good things will come to them, so they never go and practice. So the Buddha said, do not disregard merit, saying you will not come to me. He gave the example. A water jar is filled drop by drop. One drop by one drop by one drop. Eventually, the jar will be filled with water. So similarly, a wise man gathering little by little fills himself with good. That means you don't expect to have everything at one shot, right? You don't expect to have suddenly great attainments in meditation when you start out, right? You have to start out bit by bit, slowly, like the drops of the water filling the water jar. So the Buddha is saying, be patient, drop by drop, step by step, little by little, you will progress, and then eventually you will fill yourself with good, and then eventually also attain the highest levels of practice in Buddhism. So in the Buddhist practice, it is also systematic and consistent. So the practice of Buddhism is a very systematic method of personal development, as can be seen in the teachings of the Noble Eightfold Path and also the training rules of the 5 precepts. It is also highly internally consistent, with few, if any, contradictions based on the teachings of early Buddhism as taught by the Buddha himself. The early Buddhism is highly consistent. You hardly find any contradictions. It's only through the passage of time when things change and then maybe there's some contradictions. But if you go towards early Buddhism, the original teachings, you will find hardly any contradictions. So this is an aspect of Buddhism, that it is systematic and consistent. So the 5 precepts are also systematic because this trains us. This is a training rule for ourselves to become better people. Again, abstain from harming and killing, abstain from taking what is not given, abstain from sexual misconduct, abstain from lying and false speech, abstain from the abuse of intoxicants and drugs. The training rules on how we train ourselves. And then further from that is the threefold training of the Noble Eightfold Path. I've gone through this several times already throughout the course of our lessons. Right speech, right action, right livelihood, morality, sila, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, mental development, samadhi, right understanding, right thought, wisdom, panya. So this is the systematic way of the Buddhist practice. And as you can see, morality is the basis, the foundation for all our practice. After that, you're able to meditate, develop your minds, then you get wisdom and understanding, and then your morality becomes better, your meditation becomes better, your wisdom and understanding become better, and then eventually you attain stream entry, and from there you will attain Nibbana. So in the practice of Buddhism, it is also verifiable. So the teachings are verifiable not through a third party, not through other people telling you, and not from any academic knowledge, but from our own experience, from our own discovery. So the teachings of Buddhism are directly verifiable and can be directly experienced with our own efforts through the practice of mental development or meditation. In this group, mental development, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Just to recap very quickly, right effort is to apply mental discipline to prevent unwholesome thoughts from arising, to dispel unwholesome thoughts that have arisen, to develop wholesome thoughts, and to maintain those wholesome thoughts that have arisen. So right effort, right mindfulness, to be aware of our body, our postures, what we are doing, be aware of our feelings, positive, negative or neutral, be aware of the mind, all our mental states, to be aware of the Dharma, for example, the 3 characteristics of existence, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path. So right concentration, this is meditation to train the mind to be focused and disciplined in order to cultivate and acquire wisdom. And through this practice, we will be able to see things as they truly are, understand and realize the 4 noble truths, and finally attain enduring peace for ourselves and others too. So the 5 powers of enlightenment I covered last session. Faith and knowledge must be balanced, energy and concentration must be balanced, and overriding everything is mindfulness. So the last aspect of the practice, immediate results. The 6 virtues of the Dhamma, Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, discovered and well expounded by the Buddha. Sanditiko can be directly experienced. Akaliko, with immediate results. Timeless. Some people explain this as timeless. That means the Buddha's teachings are timeless. Even though he gave the teaching 2,500 years ago, they are timeless because they are even applicable up to now. this date and also into the future, as long as his teachings are in existence. So even though 2,500 years ago the Buddha gave us his teachings, we practice it as if he gave us a teaching now, as if he gave us the teachings today. So we can have immediate results if we practice. And it is we must approach the Dharma to see it capable of being attained. Because no point the Buddha give us a teaching which we cannot attain, right? It must be attainable. If not, what's the point of practice? So it is attainable. The Dharma is attainable. The Buddha's teachings are attainable. And finally, the Dharma is to be comprehended by the wise, not by the foolish, not by the people who don't want to seek these practices, and we comprehend it for ourselves. Not anybody comprehend it for us, not we comprehend it for others, but we comprehend it for ourselves. So to recap, early and original Buddhism is not mystical or mysterious. Some practices you can see nowadays, a lot of mumbo jumbo, a lot of rituals, a lot of rites, really very confusing. But actually Buddhism is really quite simplistic, it's quite straightforward. So the more ritualistic, the more complicated the practice, you can be sure that is later developments. Whereas the simpler the practice, you can more or less be quite confident that you are following the original teachings of the Buddha. So early and original Buddhism is not mystical or mysterious. The Buddha never resorted to supernatural rituals or asked for blind faith in any of his teachings. If you look at it closely, if you look at original early Buddhism closely, it's actually very, very rational, very, very common sense. It is very sensible. It is relevant to our present life, and it is very much down to earth. So these teachings actually are not that difficult. Because I come across the number of people, they say Buddhism is so difficult, you must follow this, you must follow that, you must do this, you must do that. They just go and follow other religions, because other religions are very easy, right? You just believe in that deity and then you go to heaven, so easy. So, but actually Buddhism is not as difficult as people think it is. If you look at it closely, if you study like through this course, I'm sure you all will realize that the teachings are really not that difficult. It can be practiced by anyone, even by non-Buddhists, even at the Western countries. There are even people of other religions that practice Buddhism for its philosophy, for the good qualities. So you can see that it's not that difficult, it's not that mysterious, it's not that mystical. So, but what we must do is we must approach these teachings with an open mind. Some people, they go with a closed mind, and then that's it, because they will never be open, they will never be able to learn or practice. The most important is we must approach these teachings with an open mind, and then we must make a sincere attempt to observe and practice them. No point we know the teachings, but we never observe and practice them, right? Comes back to square one, we never get any progress. We must make a sincere attempt to observe and practice the Buddha's teachings. And if we practice, the results will be immediate and beneficial for this life and future lives to come. So you try for yourself, whether it works or not. You must give it a try first. You must give it a try. See whether it's beneficial or not. See whether it's immediate or not. You go and try, you keep your precepts. You go and practice some generosity. Do a bit of humanitarian. Practice a bit of meditations. See whether it's beneficial or not. See whether the results are immediate or not. You experience it for yourself. No one can experience for you. You only will know for yourself. So this is the special aspect of Buddhism. Immediate results, immediate and beneficial for this and future lives to come. So summary of Buddhism. I don't know whether you all have understood all the lessons, whether you have understood all my talks or not. But even if you never understand all the talks or the lessons, this, of course, you must be able to remember and understand. The summary of Buddhism, very, very easy, which we have brought up so many times during all the lessons. First, avoid evil, do good, purify your minds. That's all. So even if you have not understood a single word of what I've been saying, try at least to remember this. Avoid evil, do good, purify our minds. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. And finally, the Buddha has shown us the way. It is up to us. We just need to walk the path. Okay, that's the end of this lesson, and officially the end of the 10-lesson course. Any questions?
Not question, I just want to clarify, because I think that in the very beginning of the course you mentioned that when Buddha was born, it was the story said he takes 7 steps, as a child, and then you explained that it's actually the 7 factors of enlightenment.
Okay.
Yeah. So So, and I also read that, when Buddha went to heaven to teach the Dharma to the mother, and then he came down from heaven, then they make a ladder of diamond, gold, and silver. Is it true or not?
Okay, very, very good questions. So the brother here is asking about, the Buddha's life story. After he was born, he took 7 steps and the lotus spring up from the ground. Possible or not? Huh? I mean, if you look at it as from a rational viewpoint, it's impossible, right? How can the infant just come out, walk 7 steps, and not only that, the lotus spring up from the ground as he walked? Of course, these are legends, you should take it as legends, as symbolism. But of course, people explain, oh, he's a Buddha, he's a special being, that's why all these things can happen. But throughout this course, what I've been trying to emphasize is that Buddhism is actually very rational. It's only later that all these stories come up to make the Buddha into a greater figure, a more godlike figure, so that more people are, okay, correct, Sister here more interesting, precisely. Make the stories more interesting for the other people. Because if you just teach all these simple facts, it becomes very dry. So the monks at that time, maybe they teach to those simple folk. Like what I said just now, you teach all these stories to the simple folk, they say, wow, this, wow, that is so fantastical. Then, okay, that's a stepping stone to follow the Dharma. So again, we cannot say it's 100% wrong, we cannot say it's 100% right, because this may be a stepping stone for people to enter the Dharma. But as you progress, these sort of things we slowly let go. These sort of things we see clearly. These stories about the Buddha walking 7 steps, he ascended to heaven, all this, all that. We see it more clearly as we progress, and we just let all these stories go. We don't need this anymore. Because what is important is not these stories, but it's a practice. It's the Dharma, precisely as Sister said here, it's the Dharma, it's not these stories which are important and all. It may be good for Sunday school, teach all the kids and all that, or teach all these villagers. Because in India, Sri Lanka, it's mostly village people, mostly not so well educated people. So they have all these stories to tell. You're not so boring, everybody will fall asleep. So just now you mentioned about the Buddha going to heaven, teach the Abhidharma to the mother, and then coming down the steps. This is exactly what I'm going to cover next week. Abhidharma. I'm going to cover the origins of the Abhidharma, all these stories, see whether true or not. And then I will answer your question then.